like, yeah, no one really knows how long we've been actually in the space for. I think everyone's been sat around looking at car finance mis-selling for probably, I don't know, ever since like the Johnson judgment started. And the court, obviously, it was in all of the newspapers, and it was in, obviously, we did the GB News and the BBC Radio News interviews. And it's quite interesting because a lot of people are messaging, especially on LinkedIn, like Joanne, I've seen a lot about car finance mis-selling, these commissions seem ridiculous, it seems really really high. And I was like, yeah, like we've been doing it since 2020, and everyone's like, what?
Do you think because it's like a regulated space and it's not something it's not necessarily usually public, do you think that has to do a lot with how people perceive you guys? Like they didn't know you guys were a thing basically since what you said since.
Yeah, I think that, and I think the fact that like car finance claims hasn't really been a thing. It's been something that's been talked about for a long time in sort of like very niche circles of law firms that do this stuff. But when we first started off, or when I first came across it, it was in the middle of COVID, and we was looking at these from a complaint perspective. We knew a few people who would like looking at them from submitting claims to the financial ombudsman, but no one was really taking them to court because obviously it costs money. And when we actually sort of started the marketing to try and find some of these car finance claims, everyone was sat at home during that time. Everyone was on Facebook, Instagram. TikTok wasn't even a thing then, I don't think. A lot of people replied to our marketing and just said, yeah, here's my finance agreement. I had my own finance agreements that I was looking at. We sent complaints off directly to the lender, and then it was kind of just like sit around and wait. And then we started getting DSAR responses back, and we started seeing the 300-400 page responses that come from the lenders with all of the documentation, and there'd be certain like words, like really, really little word, like we may pay a commission. And then he said, okay, well, what was the commission? And then you'd push back, and it was a really long drawn out process. Like 2020 went, 2021 went, and then we started to issue cases in court in early 2022. And it wasn't until then when you took them to court and you sat down with a barrister who said, oh no, I've seen this before, and we actually did this to get this information, that you was like, okay, this is something real. And it wasn't until we took one to Liverpool County Courts, and the judge listened to us. It was an allocation hearing, and we were saying that these lenders are not giving us the disclosure, the DSAR, the information that was given to us under a DSAR was not...
What is a DSAR?
So it's called a data subject access request, and it's basically if I write to your car finance lender with requesting to do a DSAR, they have to provide me every single piece of documentation, paperwork, etc., that is specific to your deal. So it'll be your car finance agreement, all of the ID checks, contract warranties, you name it, it would be relevant to your deal. But they never included anything to do with the commissions, never anything. And it was like, well, okay, there's a clear reference in your terms and conditions here to say we may pay a commission, or a commission might be paid, or whatever.
There's already like a small hint of secrecy being included in these kind of deals.
Yeah, well, it was like, well, you was referring to something in the terms and conditions, and then you was not giving any further evidence. And a DSAR is supposed to give you everything that's in relation to the deal. So why are you not providing that evidence? So it wasn't until we went to court and we said to the judge, during this allocation hearing, where the judge basically, you present all of your evidence and the judge goes, okay, I think it should go on the small track, which, is, low value financial claims. There's hundreds and hundreds of them every day. And it's usually a few hours, half a day maximum. Or we can put it onto the fast track, which is usually a day's hearing. You get more more tools at your disposal from a law firm's perspective. You get things like Part 18 requests, and you can do things that are called Part 36 offers as well, which basically means that Part 18, you have to give me more disclosure. Like there's certain rules that you have to follow if it's on the fast track, which gives you more ammunition to ask for more evidence, to provide more documentation. And if you don't do that and you don't comply with it, you get it can be quite nasty penalties from the judge. And it wasn't until we started to get some of these car finance claims on the fast track that we started to uncover more evidence of bad things being done by the lenders. So we started to see heavily redacted documents. So a redaction is you get a piece of paper and it might say, this is the retail rates and terms agreement, but then they'll put a big black box over all of the text. So you know what the purpose of the document is, but you can't read anything on the document.
All right. I remember you showed me a few documents where they hid some stuff there. Yeah, that there was information there that was falsified, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And under these redactions, you've provided a document now, but you've redacted 10 out of the 11 pages. What's under the redactions?
Yeah.
So it kind of was like a bit like Pandora's box in 2021 because in 2022, sorry, when we started issuing these car finance claims in the court, because we was getting more information and we were scratching around in the right areas, and then we was being presented with all of this additional documentation that was never given to us under the DSAR, under the data subject access request. But everything was redacted. So then it was like conspiracy theory moment, like, whoa,
Let me go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, literally, let me go down this rabbit hole. And it was like, okay. And then it happened again and again and again. And all of the documents, like, let's take Black Horse, for example. We was provided with the same documents. You could clearly see it was, the same title, same font, all of the scanned marks were in the same locations. But the same sections were redacted with the big black boxes. And we're like, okay, so these documents clearly exist on every car finance deal with Black Horse, for example. So then we started to rejig our disclosure requests. So previously we was asking for like any and all commission paid to the dealership. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until we did things that were like, we went through this process and we did things and we found these documentations and we've looked at how the file name was called.
Yeah.
Just something like commission payments for argument's sake, but every single file was called commission payments. So then we knew that this file type existed in their back end. So then we'd put in our letters, our disclosure applications and so on, that we want this document commission payment screen, or we'd want there was a couple of other like ones called like PHP something or other disclosure screen. So then we'd want this, and it wasn't through going through this like back and forth on disclosure that we then had like quite a comprehensive disclosure request form where it's like, okay, we know if we're dealing with Black Horse, this screen exists, or this screen exists, and this screen exists. So it was like this process of elimination of going, okay, we now need to start asking for the right things because we know they exist, and then you've provided us with documents that are so heavily redacted, but we know that document is consistent on every single finance agreement. And it wasn't until Black Horse messed up that we had our big breakthrough.
Right.
And what they actually did was they provided us a document with black boxes on it. They weren't redactions, they were black boxes. Because the second we opened the document, the black document's like misformatted. So like, when you open up a PDF in Word, for example, and sometimes the formatting goes all weird.
Yeah.
Well, these opened and the elements moved, so the black boxes moved. So it looked like a PDF, but when you converted the PDF to Word, it was clearly a layer on top of a layer, if that made sense.
Yeah. So that must have really clicked for you guys. So just to transition a little bit, it seems like it's been a work in progress from you saw this situation happening for obviously like the last few years, and now it seems like the FCA has finally taken action in terms of what you guys have been doing for like pretty much a long time now. Where do you see you guys in this moment now? Because it seems like you've started this wave where you saw the problem and you were trying to shine light on it, and now finally it's starting to kind of take shape a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it kind of feels like we've been vindicated in a big way, because a lot of this stuff that we was doing sort of from 2020 onwards, it's been us on our own with a couple of other people like Kevin from HD Law, who were doing this and going through this whole process of elimination, going through this discovery process of, what has actually happened, how's it happened, what did they actually call the commission? Because they didn't call it commission. If you asked the lender what the commission was, they would say, oh, well, Sam on the shop floor who sold the Mazda earned £50, earned £100. So then you was like, well, that doesn't make sense. You were scratching your head. And then it wasn't until you started to realize that you had to ask for all payments made to the head office or all payments made to the dealership that you started to go, oh, so this is how they hid everything. And it was, so then when the FCA came out in 2021 banning this discretionary interest model, this discretionary commission model, it was like, okay, so what do the FCA know? Mm-hmm. Because we're pushing in the door and we know that something's gone wrong, but the FCA must know something a bit more to ban this. Yeah. So it must be bad. So that then kind of gave you the fuel to go, I'm going to push it, I'm going to push. And it wasn't until we started to remove those, like I was saying to you, the black boxes, they was like, well, oh, what do we have here then?
This is what they didn't want us to see.
Mm-hmm. And this is like when we removed them, in every single email they said, we pushed back on these black boxes and they said, oh, there's nothing in, this is the solicitors for the banks talking to us now saying, there's nothing in these documents that's of any material significance. I remember the word like material quite. I was like, well, that's a really strong word. Like that is implying that there's nothing here that affects your claim or like what you're bringing. And we saw everything behind this black box on the screen. It was like, well, yes, it does. Not only does it have a material impact on the claim, but you just absolutely lied to us. And like God knows how many times. And it was things under these black boxes, or on this black box in particular for this one document, where it was like, okay, we're paying 20% commission based on the total loan amount. So the client comes in, takes out £100,000 loan to buy a Range Rover, 20 grand of that, 20% of that is paid as a commission. But then there was things like a volume bonus at like 3%. And then there was advanced commissions paid at like £300,000. So we had one where we saw it in the what was called the retail rates and terms agreement, where it was like they got paid £150,000 twice a year. Wow. As an advanced support budget. Okay, so who's paid? Yeah. It came up with not only the commission structure of how they did it, they got a fixed percentage against the loan amount, which was another thing that I'll come on to in a bit, but they got paid fixed amounts against the loan. Then they got paid an amount of commission based on how high they got the interest rate. They had these advanced support budgets that literally, as you went down the document, you could see how it filtered into this particular deal. So there might have been £40,000 worth of like this support budget available, and this particular client had £300 allocated to it from this £40,000 pot. So you took the commission, which might have been £1,500, £2,000, whatever it was, but then you'd add in this £300, which was part of this support budget. Then you'd see that it got paid an advanced commission based on doing £1 million worth of business that year, which equated to hundreds of thousands of pounds being paid to the dealer before the client walked in. And then you go, well, how could the car dealer ever be in a position where they could act in the client's best interest?
Yeah.
Because
when there's all these elements been thrown into the deal that no one knows about.
all these elements, but also they've been paid the commission at an advanced commission before the clients walked through the door.
So they're already happy that the clients walked in.
Yeah, but also I'm going to sell you
Yeah.
a car, whether you like it or not, whether it's in your best interest or not, because I don't want to give that advanced commission back at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So there was all these elements that we were coming up, and we're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is so much worse than we thought. And then it wasn't until like we did all of these telephone interviews with, I think in the summer of 2023, spring 2023, myself and our head of legal, Salman, we approached loads of car finance dealers on LinkedIn.
All right. So you didn't necessarily just go behind, like go serve the customers, but you spoke to the car dealerships themselves.
Yeah, well, because what actually happened was we was getting all of these agreements now that were so heavily redacted that we knew, piecing everything together, was like, this is suspect, and the only way you're really going to get an understanding of how this actually worked was if we speak to someone.
Interesting. So you needed to know the intricacies of the car dealership to know the full story almost.
Yeah, we needed someone to say, this is exactly how the commission was paid.
Wow.
And we spoke to everyone from the person selling the car on the car floor, who literally got like we said earlier, like 50, 100, depending on what car dealership you worked for, whether it's high value cars or low value cars, you got anywhere between sort of 50 to maximum £500 in commission. And that was it.
Yeah.
Nothing super, super exciting. But when we started to speak to those individuals on the sales floor, we then asked them, like, well, who would know this information? They said, oh, you need to speak to the sales director, or you need to speak to the general manager, or you need to speak to the franchise owner who would own like the car garage, the Volkswagen garage, or whatever. So it's through this process of like slow and steady elimination that was proper detective work.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this feels like an FBI investigation.
It kind of was. It was kind of like we were sat there and was going, this doesn't make sense. Like we've got all of this documentation redacted. We know within your terms and conditions that you're saying that a commission may be paid. The FCA have come out and banned this commission type, so it must have been really bad for them to ban it. No one. I don't.
Yeah, of course. You're not going to take such extreme measures if it was like a small industry.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was all of those things that, because obviously we was front and center. We'd been doing this since 2020, and we'd been able to see across our client base of like over 1,000 clients. We was looking at it going, well, this is consistent now. All of these Black Horse documents, we've got hundreds of them. They're all the same. The redactions are the same. There's nothing's adding up, but we can clearly see you're hiding something.
Yeah.
And then obviously the black box issue that we had when the formatting changed and it completely moved them out the way. We were like, well, okay. Wow. That happened for a reason. That mess up has happened. Now we've been able to see that. So that's then kind of gone, you're looking in the right places. Who can decipher this information for us? Car dealers.
Yeah. And how, obviously you're explaining this like very, very quickly in terms of it was just a couple of weeks, but do you know how long did it actually take from you guys finding out, oh, wow, okay, this is happening, to obviously what you said, moving on to the investigation, speaking to the car dealerships, finding out more information? Do you know like what was the waiting time around?
Oh, well, I mean, years, literally from 2020 to.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound easy. It sounds like it was a work in progress, figuring out there was something wrong. Okay, what is actually
I'd say
wrong?
4 years. I'd say the bulk of the litigation happened like end of 2023, all of 2024. Like that was when we had enough information to go, no, we know what we're talking about now. We've got all of this documentation. It's all unredacted. The judges, more importantly, like the county court judges, knew what they were talking about again. So at the start, we had all of these issues where they were comparing it to PPI, and they thought it was really like simple.
What is PPI?
Payment Protection Insurance. So basically, if you had a credit card or a mortgage, you'd have a PPI policy, which basically meant that if you became sick, lost your job, died, that your mortgage payments, your credit card payments, they would be covered under this insurance policy.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was a massive, massive scandal, and they tried to liken it to PPI, and it wasn't until we spent literally honestly, God knows how many times appearing in court on allocation hearings just to say, Judge, this is not a open and closed case. This is not a simple case because of this reason, this reason, this reason. And we were constantly updating our bundles that were submitted to the courts to go, look at this that we found in this, look at this that we found, look at the lack of disclosure here, look at all of the wording that they use, and they're clearly trying to hide things from us. Mm-hmm. And then a few judges would go, no, okay, yeah, I think what they're asking for is fair, give it them. And it was again, it wasn't, you couldn't, there was a lot of people trying to do this with 5 cases, 10 cases, and they just gave up in the end because they just weren't getting anywhere. But it wasn't because, it was because we just kept seeing little bits. And then like we did with LinkedIn, we went to all these car finance dealerships, people who used to work in the industry, all of these senior people speaking with the people on the ground selling the cars, and then them saying, you need to speak to this person, and you need to speak to the sales director, the general manager, the franchise owner, the service director.
And did you ever get to contact these people and speak to them directly?
Yeah, it was unbelievable, literally unbelievable, because the hierarchy of a dealership works like the person sells the car,
yeah,
right, and they get the smallest amount of commission. Which is crazy, but
I'm gonna do all the work.
Correct.
And I'm gonna get the least amount of money.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, thank you.
I've actually got a recording that I've prepared for this that I wanted you to listen to because it's unbelievable. But let me just play it now.
Yeah.
So me as a BM personally, we were sort of told by the higher ups to obviously get them to try and finance as much of the vehicle as possible, because obviously that's will make the most profit. Because obviously the more that's lent, obviously the more you earn in interest, the more you earn in commission, etc., etc. So someone coming in for a cheap, say, Mazda 2, which was 15 grand, or they was buying a CX-5, which is obviously the 4x4 version, high 30s, low 40s. We was paid on the amount that they financed. So us as a BM, I never fully believed.
So a BM, just so you know, is a business manager. So they're quite high up there, above a sales manager.
In it, hence why I moved away from motor trade. We was trained to use little buzzwords, to use little tactics to try and get them to finance as much as possible.
Wow.
We was trained with little buzzwords and tactics to get them to finance as much as possible. And it was well, listen, I'll just play the last bit of the clip, because I was I can't fault the salesperson because they were enabled to do that by the lenders.
And that's where we earned our commission. And obviously, from our point of view, from a selfish point of view, we've got food to put on the table, so we had to try and earn an extra bit of bunts on the sides, to try and get to finance our car.
Oh, yeah, of course. You can't blame these people because they were given the tools for something that they didn't know they were building, basically. They were just incentivized to earn more money, which obviously any person would probably do.
Yeah, exactly. They were literally given the tools to mis-sell, to for want of a better way of describing it, to rip the client off as much as possible, because like you said, and quite rightly, he admits it in his own selfish point of view, we got to put food on the table.
Yeah.
And I think this is going straight back to what the Court of Appeal said. They were acting in their selfish self-interests.
Yeah.
And it was very much identified by the Court of Appeal that this happened, and this was allowed to happen because of the lenders. It was the lenders were putting the brokers, car dealers in such a
pressure tight situation.
Yeah, where they physically could not act impartial to the client.
Yeah.